I texted Matt. We had a group chat between the three of us going on when the results came back of the Dutch test, and I texted Matt separately and I said, man, this is tough. I was hurting, because I'm an empath with my spouse, and I was hurting because she was hurting and she was struggling with it, and I in that moment decided that I was like, because and I knew pretty much right away with what he was basically suggesting from his advice standpoint of how to combat this is, I knew that this was ultimately going to be about me then this year, that she was likely not going to be able to get to compete, and it's really just at this point made it to the point where I'm going to not only be competing for myself but for her this year, because she doesn't have the ability to do it this year most likely. So I'm not looking at it as a negative. Of course I wish that we could have been doing it together, but ultimately I'm trying to use it as a positive. I'm just trying to find the silver lining here and say, like, you know what, now I'm not only just doing this for myself, but I'm doing it for her. So at the beginning of 2021, Heather and I did some blood work. Mine came back pretty okay. My lipids were definitely not in a place where we were happy. Some of my liver enzymes weren't. I didn't take the time off the gym before getting my blood work done, but at the same time, Matt and I had made the decision that we didn't want for approximately like 3/4 out of the year for my lipids to be in the position that they were. My total cholesterol was a little bit too high. My good cholesterol and my bad cholesterol definitely were not in places that we were happy. So we did a couple things differently this year than we've done in the past, where we were actually doing another mini diet, purposely bringing my weight down. So I started off at 223 and brought me down as low as 209 before we started to put like subs back in, started increasing the food again. So we completely pulled all super subs out and implemented cardio again, and then we added some of the different supplements like Revives Lipid and things like that to actually like improve my blood work. We did this over the course of 10 weeks. And so that was a big thing for us, where, our performance was the driver in the gym, where we were still trying to keep, my strength levels as high as possible without any outside aid. Putting the cardio back in, trying to purposely bring body fat down and my weight down, just so that way we could also get, my markers in place where we were happy with them, get me a little bit healthier for like a longer push that's going to end up being pretty much the rest of this year. And then ultimately be able to catch a little bit of a rebound too out of it. I got decently lean at 209, like nothing contest ready by any means, but when we implemented the subs and the food back in, my weight jumped right back up to the 215 area. It's come down and settled right around 213, but now we're just going to continuously push it back up. So over the course of the next 3 to 4 months, while we're still pushing weight back up, what we're going to do, and our goal is to hit around 225 on the scale, make sure that it's a quality 225, and then hold there. And then we're getting married in June and going right into our honeymoon. So when we come back from that is when I will then full-fledged start like my nationals prep. So it'll be, well over 20 weeks, but that's how Matt and I like to do things. We just want all the extra time to make sure all of our variables are where we want them. We're controlling all of them and nothing's out of whack. Extra time for us ultimately is just going to yield that much better of a package come December. So Heather is actually likely not going to end up getting to do nationals this year. Still have our fingers crossed that we might be able to make it work, but she had to do some additional testing. She did what's called a Dutch test to undercover some of the things that was going on with what she's been experiencing. So she has to work extremely hard to get in shape, and to the point where we were worried that something might be off. So the Dutch test checks a lot of different things. Matt Jansen and Alan Kress were ones that were reviewing that and giving her guidance. Now it came about that she was in what they said was stage 4 adrenal fatigue. I'm not a doctor by any means, so I don't necessarily know exactly all the ins and outs of that, but I definitely know that, with her adrenal glands being so fatigued and basically fried out, they were almost not functioning. to the point where, she is now on very limited training, 2 days a week, very limited cardio, no stimulants. And so I've ultimately gone a step further and said I'm not going to do any stimulants with her, just as kind of like a support thing for my spouse. Ultimately, that time that she has to take off, and ultimately we're having to do more testing and make sure that she's 100% before she pushes for her contest prep. Just from a timeline standpoint, we likely just won't have enough time to get her back to 100%. And then how long do we want to keep her there before she starts pushing again to try and get in shape for a show? So her and I have both been kind of mentally preparing on the fact that what initially was going to be kind of a dream year for us, where we were going to be competing together and shooting for our pro cards together, ultimately has turned into this is now my national prep, and now it's she's unfortunately not going to be doing it alongside me. But we did that last year where she competed and I didn't, and so the support level will still be there. Nothing really changes for us. Ultimately, it was definitely a little bittersweet. It was a tough pill to swallow because she works incredibly hard, and I just want to see her succeed. But that's what her and I are dealing with right now, with the fact that she's just having to take a lot of time off and give her body as much rest as she possibly can right now.
Okay.
So one thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that Heather and I have both made this publicly known on our Instagrams, but we want to just say it again, is how thankful we are to have people like Matt to guide us in things like this, because I wouldn't have known to have a Dutch test done. I didn't even know what that was. Heather didn't know what it was, and again, she's a nurse practitioner, so she's in the medical field. We learned something through this, and we wouldn't likely have uncovered what was going on here. We would have maybe had an assumption, but we wouldn't have had concrete proof that's quantifiable through a test. So with us being able to do some of these additional testings, through Revive, and having access to Matt, and ultimately having Alan help us out as well, from my coaching, and ultimately from his, it just shows the level that he's at, and what it means to be a part of that. Whether you're a Camp Jansen coach or a Camp Jansen athlete, it really shows that you have somebody who's like really world class at what they're doing, and ultimately who cares. The biggest thing that we had talked about with it, and Matt said this specifically, and I'll paraphrase it, is I care about you enough to want you to have to do this test. And he had to say some of the hard things and say that we have to pull back on this, as hard as that's going to be for someone who loves the gym, like my fiance. Then it's just it's difficult. And so we're very lucky to have him at our disposal. And ultimately for me and in my coaching, I'm very lucky to have him at my disposal for another set of eyes if I'm struggling with something, or if I uncover something that's going on with one of my athletes. I can reach out to him. We can get professional testing done. Things that a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes don't have access to. That's a huge benefit to being involved with Camp.